Ons eerste gas is vandag so gepraat van debt grip. Ons gesels oor bankrotskap en business rescue soos hulle in Engels sê, litigation attorney van Adams & Adams met Portia Manzini. Good morning, Portia.
Good morning. How are you, Johan?
Lovely, lovely. Thanks for your time this morning. A lot of people are in trouble. A lot of people are scared. Business rescues. I mean, we're talking big companies, airlines, even
Yes.
banks. There's a lot of trouble. So let's just start with what is business rescue.
Okay, so a business rescue means the proceedings to facilitate the rehabilitation of a company that is in financial distress. So it does this by providing a temporary supervision, which normally comes in the form of a business rescue practitioner, and then it also provides a temporary moratorium on the rights of claimants against the company. So what this means, yeah.
No, sorry, you can go on.
Sure. So what this means is, you need to be able to assess your company well in advance in order for you as the director to determine whether your company is actually in financially distressed position. And, this you normally see when your company, if you look into the next 6 months and you see that actually your liabilities will exceed the assets of the company, then you should start thinking about business rescue there.
And I've seen now specifically with SAA, like the two people that's in charge of the business rescue. I mean, they already made 15 million rand. It's a good business to be in if you get a big company. How does that work? Because now the company's in trouble, but I mean, still paying someone 15 million can be problematic. Sorry, that was a curveball question. I was just curious.
No, certainly. You see, the only, I would say, negative thing with business rescue is that the company needs to pay for the practitioner. Whereas if you looked at insolvency and liquidation, more specifically, the company does not pay for that, but the creditors as a whole, the body of creditors actually pays for that. So for business rescue, I mean, the aim is to get the company to turn around. And, this is someone who has expertise. And if they are doing, everything as per the Companies Act and, working together with the directors, they should ideally be able to turn the company around so that at the end of the day, people don't feel resentment towards them. I mean, like you're saying, 15 million per person is a huge sum of money. And you would want to see results within the next 6 months or so. So it gives them also an incentive to actually work harder at making sure that the company is rescued.
And then the difference between business rescue and liquidation.
Okay, so for a business rescue, there you are looking at restructuring the company so that it continues its existence post this difficult financial situation. And if that cannot be done, then you're looking at getting the creditors a better return than they would have in a liquidation. So by way of example, if SAA, I'm just going to take that because that's the example you use, owes creditors about 50 billion. And if it were to go into liquidation, then, after selling all of its assets, the creditors would most likely get something like 30 billion in return, all of them combined. But if you're looking at business rescue and, how the restructure would to happen under business rescue proceedings, and then you see that maybe the creditors would receive something like 42.5 billion, and then you weigh things up from there.
Sure. Portia, we're going to chat to you just after 7, so don't go anywhere. Still got a lot of questions. It's very interesting so far. Ons gesels oor, soos hulle dit Engels noem, business rescue, insolvency en, dat ek het nou reg gesê, Elsa? Insolvency.
Insolvency.
In Engels.
In Engels. Ja, ek dink jy het dit reg gesê, ja.
Insolvency. Ja. Insolvency.
Win.
Maar ons maak nie 'n wins nie, dis hoekom die besigheid doen maar. A business rescue litigation attorney from Adams & Adams, Portia Manzini. Welcome back, Portia.
Thank you.
We spoke about what business rescue is and the difference between business rescue and liquidation. And now, where does it fit in? Because at a stage, I mean, even looking at our business, we media, we spoke a couple of weeks or a couple of days ago, we spoke to magazines that closed down. Everyone knows media is in trouble. There's no advertising, you know, people can't spend on advertising. There was like your biggest client, like cars, they really only opened last week. So we had a decision, we could either close down or retrench people. But now as a company, we on like short time. That it was for me a new thing. But like, that's three options. At what stage does business rescue comes in? Is that like, let's say in a month's time, we realize, okay, now we're in even deeper trouble, you know? What's the right time for business rescue?
Okay, so the right time for business rescue is when you can actually see that your company is in financial distress. So at the moment, I would say most companies are struggling, and now would be a good time for companies that can see a future, though, to go into business rescue. If you see that after the next 3 months, there's a chance that your company is going to be able to restructure, turn around, and make a success of the year, then that's, you know, now is a good time because it will give you some breathing space. But to companies that had already been struggling prior to, the commencement of our national lockdown, then, those steps should have already been in place. I wouldn't say that business rescue is a procedure for companies that are hopelessly insolvent, but it's for companies that are struggling. So it's to just give you a lifeline to say, hang on, let's put your creditors at bay. Let us give you some space to restructure yourself. And hopefully within the next 6 months to a year, you'll be able to fully function again. And, like you're saying, some companies have already closed, which, it shows that the problem didn't start now. It's been coming. And that is why, companies need to have that assessment and look in 6 months' time, do you think we will survive? Yeah.
And then what protection does business rescue provide to companies?
Okay, so there, the protection that companies receive from these proceedings it's great. You have a moratorium, which pretty much means that your creditors cannot institute legal proceedings against the company. So, in that space, you are able to keep things at bay. Your creditors cannot come and say, they want payments. The business rescue practitioner is able to deal with that. And, you use those funds, which would be going out to your creditors to restructure your company. So there you have, legal proceedings are stopped between the companies, and you are able to fully perform your obligations and receive funds also in terms of post-commencement funding. So, there are many protection. There's a lot that a company receives when it is under business rescue. Definitely, it is something that companies should look into.
What are the rights of creditors of a company in business rescue?
Oh, you see, that one is very interesting because for quite some time, creditors are not able to institute anything, any form of enforcement action to recover, the debts from the company. But interestingly enough, if they go to the High Court and ask that the moratorium be lifted in respect of a specific claim, they are allowed to do that. Number two, they can also ask the business rescue practitioner to give them consent to institute legal proceedings. So they have that. And also they have the chance to go after the sureties. You see, the Companies Act provides for the moratorium only in respect of the company. So everyone else who stood surety on behalf of the company is fair game. So there, I would say the creditors, that's their main route. I would want them to actually proceed, how best to recover, and the loans that have been advanced to the companies, and in most instances, going against the surety's work.
What can creditors do when a debtor company is in business rescue? Also a difficult one.
Yeah, no, I mean, apart from not being able to enforce the legal actions against the company, they can, though, be able to limit their obligations against that they have in respect of the company. So they, if you have to perform some form of services to a company in business rescue, and you've been told that for these services you won't be receiving any money, you can choose not to, and then you'll be able to lodge a damages claim against the company.
It's good morning from Elsa here now, and I also have a question. I mean, when taking a look at the long term, do you think that the country as a whole has the capacity to apply this business rescuing principle at an economic level?
Certainly, I think business rescue is envisaged to be a short-term solution. And if we are being sincere and, we are all looking at rescuing these companies, then we should know definitely within a space of 3 to 6 months whether a company is viable, or whether business rescue would be appropriate for that company, so as to limit the effect that it will have on other people as well, and other companies as well. So, if you're looking at it in the long term, definitely, but only as so far as the companies are being rescued. We don't want to have a negative domino effect where company A, because it doesn't have, it's not paying its creditors, you find that those creditors are also struggling, and we have a collapse of the economy just because of one company. We don't want that. So as soon as the practitioner can see that actually this company is hopeless, business rescue is not going to work, the best thing there and most sensible thing is to convert it into a liquidation and move on to the next, to the next company, and try rescue those before they suffer even more severe effects.
Portia, we've got about a minute. What is the negative impact of business rescue on creditors?
I'll say the negative impact is definitely not being able to recover debt to the full indebtedness. If you are looking at 20 million that has been advanced by a financial institution, and they can only be able to recover 12, sometimes 10 of that, there's a shortfall, and someone has to pay for that. But if no one pays for it, then we're looking at our financial institutions also struggling, and they will also go into business rescue proceedings, and we don't want that.
Portia, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. Hopefully I don't need to call you in a month's time. You must have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much. But, maybe you should think about calling me just to advise you further.
Definitely.
Cheers.
Cheers, bye. En dit was Portia Manzini, en jy kan absoluut hoor, sy weet presies wat sy doen van Adams en Adams. Maar ek moet sê, ek dink as sy deur die voordeur kom, dan stres jy, maar tensy sy vir jou sê, ek gaan vir jou hierdeur kry.